There's something terrifying about an empty house at night. Not the kind of fear you feel in a haunted attraction or watching a horror movie. The fear is deeper than that. It's not the dark corners or the shifting shadows. It's the feeling that you are not alone, that something unseen lingers just beyond your vision. I used to laugh at stories like that. Until we moved into the house on Sycamore Street. We moved in on a warm summer afternoon. It was one of those days where the sun seemed frozen at its highest point, baking the pavement, making everything feel slow and hazy. The house stood at the end of the cul-de-sac, a two-story colonial with pale blue siding and white shutters. Rachel fell in love with it instantly. "It's perfect," she said, standing in the driveway, holding Ethan's little hand. I forced a smile. It looked fine, ordinary, even. But as I took in the house, I felt an odd unease settle over me. Like a weight pressing against my chest. The house was too quiet. Too still. The real estate agent, an older woman with a sharp smile, handed me the keys with an urgency that made me uneasy. "It's a wonderful home," she said. "You'll love it here." Then, lowering her voice, she added, "If you hear anything at night, don't worry. Old houses make strange noises." I frowned. "What kind of noises?" She hesitated. Then, with a forced laugh, she said, "Just the house settling. Enjoy your new home." She practically bolted to her car and sped off. I should have known then. But it was already too late. The first few days were normal enough. We unpacked, arranged furniture, and tried to ignore the unsettling feeling that something was off. The first night. As we lay in bed, I noticed the silence again. We lived in the suburbs, but there was something unnatural about it. No distant hum of traffic, no rustling trees, no sound at all. Then, somewhere in the walls, I heard it. A faint tap, tap, tap. Rachel stirred beside me. "Did you hear that?" "Probably just the pipes," I said, trying to convince myself. But deep down, I knew better. Ethan was the first to see it. It was late afternoon, and I was setting up his bedroom when I heard him giggling from the hallway. I peeked out. He stood at the top of the stairs, staring at something I couldn't see. "Who are you talking to, buddy?" He turned to me, grinning. "The girl." My stomach tightened. "What girl?" He pointed to the far end of the hallway, where the shadows pooled unnaturally in the dim light. "There," he said. I swallowed hard. "There's no one there, Ethan." He giggled again. "You just can't see her." That night, the house felt different. Heavier. The air itself seemed thick, suffocating. I woke to a sound. A faint creaking. I sat up. The noise was coming from downstairs. Carefully, I slipped out of bed and crept to the staircase. Moonlight spilled in through the windows, casting pale, shifting shadows along the floor. Then I saw it. The basement door. It was open. It had been locked earlier, I was sure of it. A soft tap, tap, tap came from below. I should have turned around. I should have walked away. Instead, I stepped forward and peered into the darkness. The air smelled damp, earthy. My breath hitched as something shifted at the bottom of the stairs. A figure. Too tall. Too thin. Standing in the blackness, just beyond my sight. Then, it moved. I slammed the door shut and locked it. And the whisper came, so close to my ear that the hair on my neck rose. "You shouldn't have done that." The next morning, I told Rachel nothing. But the feeling in the house had changed. It was no longer just unsettling, it was wrong. Ethan, usually so full of life, had become quiet. Pale. He avoided certain corners of the house. Refused to go near the basement. And then Rachel started seeing things. At first, it was small, objects moving from where we left them, doors found open when we knew we'd closed them. But then, one night, as she folded laundry, she gasped. "Ethan." I turned. He was standing in the hallway, watching us. Or at least, I thought it was him. His face was off, blurred. As if I were looking at him through foggy glass. His eyes were too wide. His smile, wrong. Then he blinked, and the image snapped back to normal. Rachel grabbed my arm. "Did you?" I nodded. I saw it. Something was pretending to be our son. And it was getting bolder. I had to understand what we were dealing with. I researched the house's history. There were no reported deaths. No violent past, nothing that should have caused this. And yet, something lingered. I turned my attention to the blueprints. And that's when I noticed it. A hidden room. It wasn't listed in the house tour. It didn't appear on any official plans. But it was there, a narrow space, sealed behind the basement wall. That night, while Rachel and Ethan slept, I went down with a crowbar. I hesitated. The air was heavy, charged. I pried at the boards. The wood groaned, as if resisting. Then, with a final heave, the barrier gave way. Behind the wall was a small, windowless space. And in the center of the room was a chair. On it sat a bundle of rotting fabric, child-sized, draped over something solid. I stepped closer. Heart pounding. A doll. No. A body. And as I stared in horror, the whispers began again. "She sees you." The air turned ice cold. I was not alone. And I had just woken something up. I stood frozen, staring at the tiny, decayed form slumped in the chair. The fabric around it had once been a dress, the kind a child might wear to church, now discolored with age. A child's skeleton. My breath came in short, panicked bursts. This house had a secret, a terrible, rotting secret, buried behind its walls. Then the whisper came again. "She's still here." The room suddenly felt smaller. The shadows deepened. And behind me, in the doorway, something moved. I turned sharply, my flashlight flickering. The doorway was empty. But I wasn't alone. I slammed the hidden door shut and stumbled upstairs, my heart hammering. I needed to tell Rachel. We needed to get out. But as I entered our bedroom, I found her sitting upright in bed, staring blankly ahead. "Rachel?" I whispered. Slowly, she turned her head toward me. Her face was pale, her eyes vacant. And then, in a voice that wasn't hers, she whispered, "She's coming." Rachel didn't remember speaking those words the next morning. She woke with no memory of the night before. But she was different. She moved slower, her responses dull. As if something had drained the life from her. I watched as she prepared Ethan's breakfast, her hands trembling as she poured milk into his cereal. Then, mid-pour, she stopped. The milk overflowed, spilling onto the counter. "Rachel?" I stepped closer. She didn't respond. I reached out to touch her shoulder. And she spun to face me, her eyes wide, unblinking. "You need to leave," she whispered. Then, just as suddenly, she blinked and shook her head. What was I saying? I forced a smile. "Nothing. It's okay." But I knew it wasn't. Something was inside my wife. And it didn't want us here. That afternoon, Ethan was playing in the living room when I heard him whispering again. I leaned in, straining to hear. "But I don't want to go," he said softly. A pause. "Because it's scary down there." Another pause. "Okay, but only for a little while." I stepped into the room. "Ethan, who are you talking to?" He looked up at me, his small hands clenching the fabric of his shirt. "The girl," he said. "She wants me to come play in the basement." Cold dread ran through me. "There's no girl, buddy." His lower lip trembled. "But she says she lives in the walls." I clenched my fists. Whatever was in this house, it wanted my son. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard it. Scratching. A slow, deliberate sound, like nails dragging against wood. It came from inside the walls. I sat up, holding my breath. The noise moved, crawling along the room's perimeter. Then it stopped, right beside the bed. The silence was worse than the scratching. I turned my head slowly. The darkness seemed thicker in that spot. My pulse pounded in my ears. Then, as if the shadows themselves were breathing, a whisper. "Let me in." The air turned ice cold. The bed creaked, as though someone had just sat at the foot of it. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Then, a hand pressed down on my ankle. I jerked back, flipping on the bedside lamp. Nothing was there. But on the blanket, right where something had touched me, were 5 deep, red scratches. I couldn't take it anymore. This house was wrong. Rotten. It was doing something to us. I decided to check the hidden room again. Maybe there was something else, something that could explain what was happening. When I reached the basement, my breath caught in my throat. The hidden door, the one I had forced open, was closed. No. Not just closed. Nailed shut. Someone had sealed it up again. My hands shook as I reached for the crowbar. As I wedged it beneath the boards, a loud bang erupted from inside the room. I stumbled back, my heart hammering. Then came the whispers. Low. Angry. "You shouldn't be here." The boards shook violently, as if something was slamming against them from the other side. I ran up the stairs, locking the basement door behind me. Whatever was down there, it did not want me opening that door. Rachel was getting worse. She barely spoke, barely ate. She spent hours staring out the window, her lips moving in silent conversation. And Ethan started singing a song I had never taught him. A slow, eerie melody. "Round and round the house we go. Don't look back. Don't be too slow. Close your eyes and count to 3. She'll be standing right behind thee." I swallowed hard. "Where did you learn that, Ethan?" He didn't look at me. "The girl taught me." I felt something shift in the air. "What girl?" He finally turned. His eyes, wide, glassy, were filled with something I had never seen before. Dread. And in a barely audible whisper, he said, "She's behind you." I turned. Nothing. But the hallway mirror. My reflection wasn't alone. Behind me stood a small girl in a tattered dress, her eyes black as coal. Her lips twisted into a silent scream. Then the mirror shattered. And I heard Rachel whisper, "It's too late." Rachel stopped sleeping. She sat awake in bed, unmoving, staring at the wall. Her breathing was shallow, her skin gray. She barely spoke anymore. One evening, as I passed our bedroom, I heard her whispering. I hesitated, listening. Her voice was low, murmuring words I didn't understand. I stepped inside. "Rachel?" She went silent. Slowly, she turned to face me. Her eyes, God, her eyes, were wrong. They weren't hers anymore. She smiled. But it wasn't Rachel's smile. It was too wide, her lips stretching unnaturally. "I know what you did," she whispered. A cold wave of fear ran through me. What are you talking about? Her head tilted slowly. You opened the door. I swallowed hard. Rachel, you need help. She started laughing. A low, choking sound, as if something inside her was enjoying this. Then, in a voice that was not hers, she said, "She's in the walls, and she's hungry." That night, I locked the bedroom door. Not to keep something out, but to keep Rachel in. I woke to silence. Too much silence. I bolted upright. Ethan's door was open. His bed was empty. I ran through the house, calling his name. No answer. Then, from downstairs, a creak. I spun toward the basement door. It was wide open. No. No, no, no. I rushed down the steps. The air was thick, suffocating. My flashlight flickered as I reached the bottom. Ethan. My voice cracked. Buddy. Something shifted in the darkness. And then, from inside the sealed hidden room, a child's whisper. Daddy. My blood ran cold. It was Ethan's voice. But it wasn't coming from Ethan. I gripped the crowbar, yanked at the boards. Something inside the room moved. The moment I pried the last plank free, the door swung open on its own. A wave of icy air rushed out. The room was dark. Wrong. In the center stood a child-sized figure. At first, I thought it was Ethan. But the closer I got, the features were blurred. Shadowed. As if the face wasn't fully formed. Then it grinned. A grin far too wide, stretching ear to ear, splitting its face open like a wound. And in a warped, broken voice, it whispered. She let me out. The door slammed shut. The lights went out. And then the screaming started. I don't know how long I was trapped in the dark. The whispers slithered around me, voices shifting in and out of my ears. He took her. She never left. She's still here. Then, one voice rose above the rest. Rachel's voice. Get out. Light exploded into the room. I was on the basement floor, gasping for air. The hidden door was open. Empty. Rachel stood at the top of the stairs, her face pale and drenched in sweat. Her eyes were clear again. But she looked at me in horror. She's awake now, she whispered. And somewhere in the house, a child's laughter echoed through the walls. I finally understood. This house wasn't haunted by a ghost. It was haunted by the house itself. A memory, looping. Feeding on us, reliving its worst moment over and over. The girl, whoever she was taken. Hurt. Buried here. And she wanted a new family. She wanted Ethan. The house knew we wanted to leave. It wouldn't let us. Doors locked on their own. Windows wouldn't budge. The front door was gone, just solid wall where it used to be. And then, the walls started bleeding. Thick. Dark liquid oozed from the cracks, dripping to the floor. The house groaned, the wood stretching, twisting. Ethan screamed upstairs. I ran, taking the steps 3 at a time. When I reached his room, I stopped dead. He was standing in the middle of the floor, staring at the wall. No. At the hands reaching out from it. Small, gray fingers, clawing, pulling the plaster apart like rotting flesh. The girl was coming through. And she was smiling. Rachel grabbed Ethan, clutching him to her chest. I ran for the garage, grabbed the gas can. If the house wouldn't let us leave, I'd make sure there was nothing left to hold us. I splashed gasoline across the floors, over the walls that whispered my name. The voices screamed in protest. No. Don't leave me. Please. I struck the match. The flames erupted instantly, racing up the walls, swallowing the whispers and fire. The house shook. The air howled. Rachel, Ethan, and I ran. As we reached the street, the fire roared higher, the shadows twisting inside the flames. And for a split second, I saw her. The girl. Standing in the second-story window. Watching us. Smiling. As if she knew. This wasn't over. The fire department arrived too late. They found nothing but charred rubble. No bodies. No proof of what we had seen. But I knew. And I know this. Somewhere. In another house, another family will hear whispers in the walls. And the girl will be waiting.